Okay, so before I move on, maybe let's check the time. If you have 1 or 2 questions on this, I will. Resource. Good morning. Do you think there's a way to assess or consider human resource risk based on employer fee to go back to work? Now, okay, just quickly on the fear of employees in going back to work. Short question, I don't know. Personally, I'll go wherever, whenever. But the talent risk, the more long-term talent risk is more a skill risk and an availability and the transformations of the skilled person, the skill set of the population to the speed of technology. There's been quite a large number of studies that have shown that technology and innovation move faster than our capacity to learn. And so there is a real need to upscale or to, I shouldn't say upscale, actually to modify the skill sets of person and that are joining the job market, but also more importantly that are in the job market already, so they can keep track. And you have this very important innovation that can actually get diffused. Okay, so I'm going to answer that way if you don't mind. All right. So the other risks, and you're going to say, okay, fine. So rising risk, we all know. So what are your upcoming risks and why did we miss it? Well, like I said in my first sections, the expert consensus has a very poor predictive performance. Okay, so basically, we merely reproduce recent past to predict the future. Is what I would call later as a linear thinking. So basically, it's like the Excel spreadsheet of Dragon. Okay, you reproduce the recent past, which is wrong every time you have a changing paradigm. And we have short memory. So pandemics, terrorist attack, corporate scandals, all that are in the top risk register, usually after the fact, not always, after the fact. And then they stay in this top risk register for 2 or 3 years. And pandemics was, I remember the time post SARS when it was in all the top risk register and we had pandemic scenarios. And then other risk took precedence and we sort of forget that threat, even though it hadn't gone away. And some people have warned. Bill Gates' TED Talk of 2015 is now very, very famous. If you don't know it, Google Bill Gates' TED Talk 2015 and watch it. It's interesting. But my daughter's professor, David Oshinsky at NYU, was telling his students a few months ago that pandemic was a real risk and a real risk in the short term. So this information is there, but again, is it a signal on the noise? Sometimes you have that issue. All right, and so how do you do that? And what's our role as risk manager? Well, that's the idea of being counter-cyclical rather than pro-cyclical. And being by counter-cyclical, I mean, don't follow the herd, okay? These headline risks hopefully, are taken care of by the herd and the attention is there. The other is where are the blind spots, okay? Where are the things that are dangerous but that no one is looking at, okay? And that's really the core of the risk you should know. Again, in this linear thinking, and I've mentioned, we don't have diversity enough, and diversity in people. And I don't mean gender diversity. I can also mean gender diversity, but that's not what I mean by diversity. I mean diversity of age, diversity of background, diversity of personalities. You need soft ones, hard ones, math ones, soft skills ones, optimistic, pessimistics, different age, different countries, different nationalities, different education. In a firm, in government, in corporations, even in my little firm, I pride myself to have a very diverse team. It takes a lot of energy because you need to request discussions and debate with people who are different than you. But the quality of decisions that are achieved are enormously superior. And it's not only me saying that, there's tons of studies. Social Physics is a great book also for you to read. And so that's true in people, but it's also true in models, okay? You have usually these scenarios or these models are slight variation, optimistic, pessimistic, somewhere in the middle, rather than having very different modelings that can cover each other's blind spots. It's true in these modeling in pandemics, but you can absolutely generalize the finding in others. Okay, so usually use these slides or the other way around. You can't see what's around the corner, but here, and that's what I mean by these upcoming risks, you can see what's in the horizon. You can't see what's around the corner. You can't see the true breakthrough, but what's in the distance, hopefully, you'll be able to see. I have 2 questions. Okay, I'm going to park the question for now, but I'll address it when I can. Okay, so the evolutions is the S-curves. Okay, so typically the evolution follow an S-curve pattern. It means a slow burn, a sharp rise, and then a flattening. It's true in technology, it's true in economics of information. I remember my course when I was teaching microeconomics and economics and information, the telephone, all that, and using the telephone. Here, I found for you preparing this session, the iPhone sales since 2007. And I was very happy to see that it follows a fair S-curves, and there's lots of examples if you want to see it. And so catching, and then you have also the breaches. It's not really an S-curve, but it does flatten. Why? Because people adjust. Okay, so you cannot reproduce the past because people adjust to a reality, and that's what changes the future. But so going back to these upcoming risks. I'll give you some examples of the type of the slow burn. Hacking and code breaking was around since the 60s and evident in the 70s. I don't remember. Well, I was a kid in the 70s, but I really don't remember that. Global warming and climate change, there was increasing concerns in the 70s and a consensus forming in the 80s. It hit the headline news, last year or the year before? That's far too late, okay? That's another aspect that is really important, is once it hit the headline news, it's far too late. So in terms of horizon screening, really look at when these things start. And that requests a lot of screenings. I'll come back to that. Now, I like this movie, not because of the actor, don't accuse me of anything, although I know a number of people who like this movie because of the actor, but it's the never lose focus. And there's another aspect than external risk, it's the internal risks. And this is usually counterintuitive when I teach about emerging risks, but again, it's like this blind spot argument. I've been working in scenario analysis and identification and quantification with firms since 2007. And the immense majority of scenarios that people envisage for their firm are external scenarios, okay? It's a third party breaking down, it's an external cyber attacks, it's an external things. But when you look at large corporate-based, I'm not talking about globalized defense, but corporate-based disaster, whether it's the TSB disruptions and the Facebook leakage scandals and BNP Paribas embargo fines of $9 billion and Jérôme Kerviel trading Société Générale, you have a lot of billions of dollars that have been lost because of internal failure. Yes, sometimes there's a trigger, Cambridge Analytica. Yes, of course, it was external to Facebook, but the channel was extremely weak. And so my point is, when many concentrate on the much talked about risk, don't pay attention to your day-to-day business that might suffer from relaxed attention. So don't lose size, don't lose focus on your critical processes, your critical systems, your key people. Okay. So before I move on to the addressing of the upcoming risk, I will take a few questions. Are there any structured processes for organizations to think about emerging risks? Do emerging workshop works? All right, it's a good question, so I'll generalize it. Structure, I wouldn't say so. The most developed emerging risk processes I've seen in the financial sector are around compliance risk and regulatory risk with horizon risks. For the others, I'll answer by the next slides. And any ideas on how to recognize early warnings from a bigger problem to come? The Big Short, we only hedge funds spotting a few basis points. How do we spot the canaries in the coal mine? Well, the canary, so one question is a long questions, but yes, I will be sharing the slides with the group. Absolutely. I need to find technically how to do it, but I'm upscaling my skills in technology. I'm a paper and pencil person, so I'm steep in the learning curve. But yes, it will be addressed. I had a question on the canaries in the coal mine. How do you see the early warnings? That's KRIs, that's driver of events, but we'll need to dedicate a topic on that. Going back to the question on the structured aspect of horizon screening, for those of you who are in the public sector or UN agencies or even non-financial risk industry, you might be familiar with the PESTLE analysis. And PESTLE is the acronym of political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental change. And so it's a way to organize your thoughts to see analyze what are the different changes in these sorts of dimensions of environment and select the ones that are relevant to your exposure and your business model. Okay, I'm not telling you, for those of you who work in bank A, bank B, or insurance A or B, to screen the entire evolutions of the entire industry. It's far too daunting. Okay, but rather is to select, given your operating model, given your typical exposure and the nature of your business and your organization, what are the types of changes that is particularly relevant to your business model? And for that, well, you can do it manually, but again, I'm talking about innovation and technology. AI can help a great deal. Okay, we have artificial intelligence, and if some of the very big specialists of AI listening to us, hi guys again. AI is very interesting because it's very complementary to human brains, and that's sometimes what people don't talk about enough. I wouldn't be arrogant to say don't understand enough, but the way computer thinks is basically to categorize and treat a vast amount of information, but making the connections and analogies is a lot more complicated for a computer. Our human brain is the opposite. We have very limited cognitive capacity in a sense that we cannot integrate many information at the same time. Okay, we're very, very focused. But what we're very good at is to make creative links and creative analogies. So having the map and using, that's what we call augmented intelligence, okay? And using AI to augment our capacity rather than seeing as a competition is particularly important. So again, a side comment on the PESTLE analysis. So that's for the outward horizon screening. Inward, look for blind spots. So in terms of blind spots, typically you have corporate taboos, so things that everybody knows but no one wants to talk about, the unaddressed weaknesses, or the overuse, the slackness. I have questions coming in, so I'm going to take a few. What is a corporate taboo? I just mentioned what it is. So it's sort of the unspoken truth, the elephant in the room. Okay. All right. So what now? Again, the other sections. How do we translate that into today's reality? What are the upcoming risks with disruptive potential? One that worries me, talking to specialists, and let me remind you that I work at, or I tell you that I work at the Department of Computer Science at UCL, is quantum computing. So for those of you not familiar with the concept, is these types of computers that have a computing capacity so larger than the current technology that it could break any code at any moment. One of my research consultants is part of I am too, but is part of a think tank, and there are experts working with banks, and let me be broad on that. Not everyone is taking the threat seriously because the technology doesn't exist yet and is not operational yet. When it will be, our cyber security will be out of the window. So for the big banks, the tier 1 banks and others listening, have a peek at this would be my suggestion. Other personal concern, which freaks me out every time I think about it, is the old nuclear power plant. And it is a conundrum because coal mine is not great for climate change, as we know. Nuclear energy is a lot cleaner, is a lot more efficient. The problem is we are running with power plants that should have been decommissioned, and I have some in mind in Europe, let's say, that should have been decommissioned decades ago and have not been, and the innovation is slow for a number of results. So that would be one of my personal worry. In terms of upcoming risk in organizations, I talk about diversity a lot, and it's true in boards, but it's also true in senior management and decision making. That would be one of my weak spots of organization. Linked to that, the danger of group things, but also the danger of ineffective whistleblowing channels. I heard the whistleblower of Cambridge Analytica at a conference, a fascinating guy, of course forgot his name because I'm so bad with names, but he made a parallel between a whistleblowing channel and white hackers, okay? And companies use white hackers to test the resilience of their system and the strengths of their IT system. The idea would be to consider the whistleblowers as white hackers, basically, as testing the resistance of the governance and the ethics of your corporations before you hit the headline news for the wrong reasons. And then under investments in people skills and training, this is what I observed working with firms, usually firms that suffer a backlash of operational risk events are firms that are also suffering from years of under investments in people, in technology as well. But here my point is in people.